little more. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love you.
So the next slide talks about, it's a reconciliation to numbers that you were presented in the past. So on March 31st, there was a set of numbers that assumed 100% of the telecommunication expense was allocated to CLIC. And again, the reason that was done in that way at that time was because we were focused on the WAVE proposal, and under the WAVE proposal, 100% of the telecommunication expense would go away. But that's the basis on which those numbers were prepared. And then on the right column, we have the allocation based on the new allocation, so 94% to CLIC rather than 100% shown in the prior column. And the essential difference between these two columns is $2 million. And if you look at total O&M and taxes, it's $33.5 million is the total O&M expense that I described in the prior two slides. And because we're allocating that 94% to CLIC rather than 100% to CLIC, you can see that it's $2 million less. That's the essential difference between the two. So moving on, sure.
Any questions about that last slide? I figured you would, so I want to just let's just pause for a second and look at this slide, think about it, and ask our questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I really appreciate the information that from a rate standpoint, we're still staying with the 75-25, but it's from out planning going forward, looking at the 94.6.
And actually, we're proposing, we're planning to implement the 94.6 for everything. So it would be, that's what would be reflected in our financials. That's what would be reflected in rates going forward, because basically 94% of the cost of the telecommunication expense that we incur is caused by CLIC as opposed to the electric side.
I understand that, but so you don't have the numbers running that if you kept it at 75%. I'm trying to come at this from a business standpoint, and when I look at a private business, you make the deal, so to speak. That here's the deal, and I know Councilmember Campbell and I have been trying to come up with an analogy, and the closest I could come to was Tacoma Power buying a really nice car and going to drive it to New York City, and says this is the car we need to get to New York City, and then CLIC saying, hey, you know what, we can ride along, but we'll split the costs, and this is how it'll go, and it's great. And so off they head, and then they get to Minneapolis, and Tacoma Power says, you know what, we're done. You can take it on to New York, but now you got to come up with more money to cover it because you're the only one riding in the car. And you kind of go, yeah, but I thought we were going to New York together, kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to see where the 75-25 would be, because that's kind of how it was set up initially, and just to see where how those numbers lay out, because that's how, as it was back before, that's how it was kind of shown as being a reasonable way to go. And I understand technology changes and everything, so that would be a request. Thank you.
Councilmember Bo, I like analogies as much as anybody, and I think your analogy is a good one about the car going to New York. And so if I could just follow up on that analogy, that is all true, and we got to Chicago together.
Yeah, that's probably closer, Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago, Minneapolis.
But the difference is that we're not going to New York anymore. We were going towards wired meters, we thought. We got as far as Chicago, and then we decided we're not going to wired meters anymore. And that's the reason for the fork in the road. If we were both still interested in going to New York, great. But we're not.
How long is this analogy conversation going to go on?
Well, I just to tie in the previous discussion we had this morning, we realized that with any business, you can't immediately change your accounting numbers, because no business could take that just to say overnight to say, okay, you're going to go from 75% to 94%.
Right.
Normally, you build into it and say, okay, realize things have changed, but the reality is you've got to build your way into this.
Yeah, there could be a transition, sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's why I think having the 75-25 would be interesting, is just to see it as a comparison.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
We'll provide
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love you.
Thank you, Councilmember Campbell, and that just made us all hungry. So, given the late hour, Councilmember Walker, followed by Councilmember Toms.
If we could have slide 8, please. The reason why Councilmember Campbell's question about 2012 is important is because what we were trying to impart in 2012 was the value that Councilmember Woodards has said time and time again, and many of us have said time and time again. I think that the answer that you've been giving us is not to the question that we had originally, which is, how can we keep it? And so, all respect intended, is you keep coming back and telling us it's not financially feasible. And this was a great presentation today. But it doesn't, what we're trying to figure out is really what Councilmember Woodards, what Board Member Flint, what Councilmember Mello just kind of came up with, of just really wanting to see, as crazy as it is, how there's so much value in this city of keeping the damn thing. How can we do it? And what would it look like? And so I know it's more work, but that's why I think you don't have council on board. And that's why I think there's so much disharmony in the community.
I appreciate that. And it is a lot of work, but we don't shirk that. I mean, the idea of building out this other alternative with the same robustness is an appropriate thing.
And so I'm just trying to figure out from council if I am representing that thought. I mean, nothing is where we want it to be. WAVE is not really where we want it to be. I've got lots of questions about that. And I don't need to get into those. You've heard them all before. You know, the Rainier Connect, I have questions about that one. And so what would make the best sense to me, and I always have to go back to my own personal experience, is, okay, I'm paying for Click. I'm also paying Rainier Connect. I've got these two bills. I've always wished that they could just be one. I know there's all these competing interests. There certainly are a lot of lobbyists. There certainly are a lot of impassioned consumers out there. But I think it probably would be the best use of our time for you to come back at least one more time and just show us what it would look like. And of course, that might mean more money. It might mean paying an exorbitant amount of money to buy out the ISPs. I don't know what it's going to mean, but I think that's why that's certainly my resistance, is you keep coming back and saying it's not financially feasible, and it's like, that's not answering the question. That's not answering what we really wanted all along. That's enough.
Thank you, Councilmember Walker. I do believe you're channeling a lot of the spirit of a lot of the questions I know since 2010 when 5 of us came on board at that time, in the sense of, and she's trying to do it very nicely, so I'll try to do that too. But utilities tend to be run by engineers and accountants, and private businesses tend to use engineers and accountants as a backup because there's something out in front, which is a little bit more. I don't want to say used car salesman, but a little bit more, work in the room kind of thing. And so I think the question she's really asking is how would you work the room if we were going to go down this process? So, Councilmember Toms.
Can I just say
Oh, sure,
one
yes.
other thing? That's what it's all about, to give us all the information that we need that really addresses what we are trying to all achieve together.
Stick with Click. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I said, don't it always seem to go but you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Mitchell Shook, followed by Sammy Sonju and Jennifer Bradley.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm Mitchell Shook, the founder of Advanced Stream. We're one of the ISPs on the CLIC network, which is our municipal network under the Tacoma Public Utility. And we've had just want to give a monthly update on where we've been the past month. We learned a lot. We made a lot of progress. And we've had the last week's study session. There were some just great analogies that there was one about grandpa loaning us money for a car. And so I think that we're no longer seeing the inferred debt, the $2 million in interest that was being charged to ourselves, basically, on the income statement. So that's a nice thing. We've also had an analogy about a road trip. So this network was going to be built. It takes 26 people to run it. And so there is this road trip, basically, the sharing of the cost at 75-25. Thankfully, we'll be coming out, and hopefully Kate Martin will report on the good progress that Plan B's made in achieving the profitability under the 75-25 allocation. The other thing was there was a little bit of misinformation. It's been characterized by TPU management that our rates are no longer lower than Comcast Seattle, but that's not true. Most of my customers are on this Res 1 plan, and our rates are $17 less. This is CLIC's own slide number 10 from the study session. So I want to make sure that the public out there, if you're seeing any of this, our rates are still lower. And so there's stickwithclick.com where you can go and learn more about the success that we're having with Plan B. We also discovered we can have gigabit speeds. So that was a real game changer. I think nobody knew that 2 years ago when this process of potentially privatizing Click started. So maybe everybody steps back, and even Director Gaines must be thinking, wow, we didn't know we had a V8 under the hood, another nice analogy. So I would like to encourage everybody, part of the solution, and we've been asked how we can keep it, requires the ISPs be at the table and in the room helping with that. I've left messages for Bill Gaines to please invite us. This is our bailiwick. It's what we do. They're utility men. We have lots of ideas on how to make it work, and we want to be invited to the table. Still waiting for that phone call from Director Gaines. I don't know if anybody can give him the secret handshake and encourage him to embrace his ISPs and his partners to help with that process and to answer the important question, how can we keep the damn thing? And finally, it's going to take everybody. I know that, it's like use it or lose it. You don't know what you got till it's gone. And here we have this thing. I'm part of this Upgrade Seattle, and we had 200 people at the last meeting, people wanting what we already have. It requires a TV component. Google learned that in Kansas City. You need to have a TV component. They added it later. So what we're doing, TV is very profitable, by the way. It made $3.7 million. I've included the monthly income statement. We're green and growing. Stick with Click. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shook.
So in May, Click earned $265,000 in profits from operations. And those profits go to retire the sunk depreciation and amortization expense. You see it there. That's a benefit to all the ratepayers. Click is subsidizing the ratepayers by paying off that sunk cost that they would otherwise be stuck with. Stick with Click. Thank you, thank you, thank you.